Welcome back to the Middle East now, where exchanges continue across the Lebanon-Israel border. 4 people are reported to have been killed in South Lebanon. That country's foreign minister says Israeli attacks are pouring oil on fire, which threatens to ignite the front. At the same time, Iran's top envoy says that resistance forces are ready to open new fronts with Israel if the conflict in Gaza continues. His comments come ahead of a 4-party summit set for Amman Jordan tomorrow between US President Joe Biden and Egyptian and Palestinian leaders to discuss the dangerous repercussions of the war in Gaza in the region. Let's get an update now across to our correspondent Mia Alberti, who is in Beirut in Lebanon for us. Mia, thank you so much for your time. Just give us the latest where you are currently.
Yes, well, a very tense day so far. It's been a non-stop barrage of cross-border fire. We can now confirm that 4 people were killed with Hezbollah simultaneously just announcing in the last hour that 4 of its members were killed, not detailing how, but supposedly in this Israeli attack at the border, which could cause more retaliation. Throughout the day we saw Hezbollah attacking tanks in Israeli towns south of the border here, saying that they have killed at least 1 Israeli soldiers. Now the Israeli Defense Forces have not confirmed that, only saying that they have injured in these targets that were hit during the afternoon. And Israel has always also been bombarding the South Lebanon border region, very close to some houses, even striking some abandoned buildings in the middle of some of these villages here. And although the United Nations have said that it is in contact with both sides, that both Hezbollah and Israel do not show a sign that they want to escalate the tension, that the United Nations is quite concerned about some miscalculation. So any incident, even an accident, could really force these 2 sides to go into a war. But we do know that the main target, the main trigger that could cause that, it's actually in Gaza, not here, with an imminent Israeli offensive there. So that could, whenever that happens, we have to look at the southern border and see what Hezbollah does. Now this has been received with a lot of fear and apprehension among Lebanese and foreigners here, with many embassies advising their civilians against traveling. Canada even telling its citizens here in Lebanon, there's a lot of Lebanese with dual citizenship, telling them that it's time to leave Lebanon while there's still commercial flights. And this is because some airlines are starting to cancel their flights to and from Lebanon. That includes Swiss and Lufthansa so far, with also the Lebanese carrier MEA announcing that it is transferring 5 of its 24 aircrafts into Turkey as a precaution. So a lot of fear of what could happen, and a lot of doubts, most of all.
Namia, of course, there is a lot of hope that, Jordan being set to host a 4-party summit in Amman with US President Joe Biden, as well as Egyptian and Palestinian leaders, will somehow put a spotlight on this, and somehow there will be some form of discussion just to talk about the repercussions of this war, and maybe we will see some form of ceasefire. What are you hearing?
Well, what I've been told by many analysts is that it's not that much power that these countries will have. Of course, the United States will have a major influential power over Israel's decisions, but I'm talking about the Arab countries, that they might not have enough power to try to deter Israeli attacks via United States communication. And the question is, will the situation hold until that meeting takes place in the next few days? Because the situation is very tense. We know that in Gaza people are running out of basic supplies, water, food and fuel to have electricity, including in hospitals. In the beginning of this day it was supposed to go for 24 hours. So before that meeting is deemed to take place, we are expecting Gaza to run out of water, to run out of fuel, and so the situation might really escalate from Hamas desperately trying to attack Israel, and then we could see a full-blown escalation. So we could see some of these, especially like the Gulf countries, trying to move their economic power to try and sway the United States to influence Israel to not attack Gaza. Of course, these countries are supporting Palestine in this situation, but it is such a tense situation that even though we could see something escalating before that meeting takes place.
You just mentioned a few minutes ago, of course, about the situation in Gaza, in as far as those borders are concerned. We were expecting and we were hearing, of course, that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was going and willing to open sections of the border to allow for much needed humanitarian aid to come through and trickle to Gaza, particularly, as you've said, some hospitals, as an example, are in much need of fuel, as an example. What do we know so far in as far as those humanitarian corridors?
Look, the United Nations have been sending appeals to open that crossing. It doesn't depend just on Israel, it depends mostly on Egypt right now, who have closed the Rafah border, but that was after it was bombed by Israel. So what Egypt is trying to get is some guarantees that Israel would keep that passage safe. Now, what is the concern for these two countries? For Egypt is that they could see an influx of refugees that both Egypt and Jordan as well from the West Bank do not want to receive coming from Gaza. But for Israel, the main concern is that they could see what they call the export of Hamas terrorists. This is what they don't want to see. They don't want to see that border being open and this aid coming in, perhaps even, and then looking at members of Hamas leaving and going into other countries. This is the main fear that both Egypt and Israel have at the moment. At the moment, the Rafah crossing to Egypt is still closed. This is the bottom line. Although all of these appeals, although we are looking at a TikTok happening here, and with all of these appeals from the United Nations, that crossing is still closed, and it is difficult even for the United Nations to, even if the border is open, for example, by Egypt, these organizations such as the United Nations, and I'm talking about the United Nations because it's probably the biggest one that we're talking about, will need guarantees that they can safely send their personnel with aid to try and also bring back some of the international foreigners that are there in safety. And while that won't happen, and until we don't have that, it is not likely that we will see this aid crossing.
Mia Alberti, thank you so much for your time. Of course, Mia coming to us live there from Beirut in Lebanon. Of course, this is 4 people are reported to have been killed in the south of Lebanon. We'll continue to bring you more and more updates on the situation on the ground.